Okay, so this question deals with Venn diagrams, or at least Venn diagrams will help us organize the way the question is going to work. So we'll read through it because it's a bit confusing. There are 900 employees at Kanto Crafts Incorporated. Of these, there are 615 are female, 345 are under 35 years old. So already I'm starting to read through it, and it looks like they're just going to kind of pepper us with a lot of data here. So kind of just reading through it the first time is nice, but it's not really going to get all the information. So we're going to pull out the important parts right off the bat, and we're going to make like a checklist. Okay, so number one, 900 employees, we'll call them E. There are 615 who are female, because this will help us decide how to build our actual Venn diagram. So 615 are female, 900 employees. So I'm just going to underline them so we know we've done them. 345 are less than 35 years old. 482 are single. Okay. And then now I've put, this is kind of like general. So I've kind of colored it black. And I know this because I've read through it once. The next piece of information they're going to give us actually is giving us two pieces of information. It tells us that there are 295 single females, and that's actually two of our categories. If you look from above, there's a category of female, category under 35, category single. So I'm going to kind of put this to the side. This is like our second tier of data. So there are 295 single females. So I'm putting both of those in there so that we can see we're kind of drawing from the overarching categories. 187 are single and under 35. Okay, so these are filling up two categories, and 187 and 190 are female and under 35. Great. So that's like our subcategory from the overarching one that we did in black. And then finally, the very last piece of information here says 120 are single females under 35. So that's all three of those categories. So there's 120 who are single, female, and under 35. Okay. So we have to kind of decide what our categories are going to be for our Venn diagram here. And from reading the above part here, this 900, this is actually going to be like the set. So when we refer to a set, it's usually kind of like the rectangle that all of those Venn diagram circles are in. So I'll show you what that would look like as a visual. This is kind of, our set is everything within this area. And then our Venn diagrams, okay, so I've drawn the set, so I'm going to highlight that so we know we can check it off our list. Our Venn diagram is going to deal with these three categories. We're going to have three different circles that are going to intersect. One of them is going to deal with female, so I'll try to color the circles here, line color. Red for female. Yeah, well, actually, do I get pink? That might help. There we go. Not saying it has to be, just my daughter's wearing a lot of pink, so that's what I'm thinking of right now. Pink circle. So this will be our circle for females. Under 35, we can just make that black, that color. So that's kind of intersecting there. And then finally, the last category is single. What color is single? Blue. Sure. Blue is single. Okay. So, now I know these aren't quite even. But if you take a look, we have three categories, and I'll write them in there just so we remember. Black was under 35. Blue was single. And I'll use red here because it's easy for me to access. Female was our pink category. Okay, so what we're actually going to do is it seems intuitive to kind of take these numbers and start putting them in here. But the way a Venn diagram is easiest built is actually if we take where all three overlap and we actually go from the smallest, not the smallest, but the most complex category. That's the single, female, and 35. Okay, we fill that piece of information in, and then we go into our subcategory, and then we go into our single categories. Okay, so what that means is single, female, 35. Well, if we take a look, that's where all three of these intersect. So that's this area right here. So what that means is there's 120 people who are within that area. So that's all. That blue is going to go away in a second. So there's 120 people in there. That's the triple category. So we've already checked that off, and I guess I should have did it in green because I'd written it in green. So we've got that checked. The next thing we'll fill out is these three major categories, and this is where we're kind of dealing with two pieces. So this is where the Venn diagrams are kind of overlapping, or just two of them overlap. So here's one of them. This is female and under 35. So if we look, female under 35, that's this category. Now, in order to actually calculate this, okay, let's do this again. That's technically all of this area, okay? But since we're looking for just female under 35, and we've said that there's 190, we actually have to subtract that 120 from it, okay? So in order to calculate this area here, we have to take the 190, and then we're going to subtract the 120 from it because it's already been counted in the middle. So the number of people who are actually going to be in that category are just 70. So this spot here, we just actually write the number 70. And if we do this process the whole way, it becomes much easier towards the end. So once we've drawn in that middle one, we're constantly subtracting it from areas because we don't want to be double counted. So what does that mean? Let's take a look at another one. Under 35 in single, that's this area here. There's 187 people, but again, 120 has already been counted. So we take our 187, we're going to subtract our 120, and we're going to end up with 67. There are 67 people who fall within the, and I've drawn it really big, so the area doesn't really justify the number, but the under 35 in single, that's this area here. You'll notice that's where these two kind of overlap. Okay, so there's 67 people there. And then finally, the very last one, the area definitely doesn't justify because this one's the largest. Single and female, that's this little area of safe space for there. And we're going to take the 295, we subtract the 120, and we end up with, let's see, 175. Is that correct? Let me check my note. 175, yes. Okay, good. So I'm going to try to fit in that little area, 175. So there's 175 people who are single and female. Once we've done that, we can then go to the overarching categories, okay? And we kind of repeat that same process. What we're going to do, and there's kind of two ways you can look at it. If I'm, for instance, going to calculate the number of just females, so that's outside of these categories, that's this area here, I got to take the overarching number, and if we look again, that was 615, and I got to subtract this number, and this number. Okay. Once I subtract those three, I'll have how many people who are just female. So what does that mean? Well, we take our 615, and I didn't really leave myself a lot of room, so I'm going to move down to the bottom with these numbers. We'll redraw them down here. There's 615 female. Okay. So to calculate this, we take our 615 and we're going to subtract our 70, and we're going to subtract our 175, and we're going to subtract our 120, and we're going to figure out what that leaves us with. So I'll bring up a little calculator here. I don't think you can see it, but you can maybe follow along if you want on your part. 615 minus 70 minus 175 minus 120 tells me that there are 250 just females who don't fall in those other categories. So 250. So this area here gets filled in with the number 250. Then we can go to our next overarching category, which is under 35. And there's 345 people who are under 35. Sorry, this category is kind of, I'm using numbers to give it a title. But the way this will work, we do 345. And for the under 35, we're going to subtract these three major numbers, 70, 67, and 120. So we subtract the 70, the 67, and again the 120. And I've done these calculations already once. So instead of showing you on the calculator, I'm just going to put it out. When you subtract all these, you should get 88 when you go through it. Okay, so we have 88. And finally, the very last one, I'll write it in here again, single, 482 who are single. So 482. And we're going to subtract 175, 120, and 67. So 175, 67, and 120. And that'll be equal to 120. So there should be 120 there. So we've filled in our Venn diagrams, but if you remember, the very first thing I did was the set. Okay, and if we go up to the question, we finish the Venn diagram. Let's see if we've actually answered it, because I didn't actually get to the end of it. Use a Venn diagram to determine how many employees are married males who are at least 35 years old. So married, that wasn't one of our categories. That's the opposite of single. Males, that's not one of our categories. That's the opposite of female. And who are at least 35, that wasn't one of our categories. That's the opposite of under 35. So what that means is they're trying to figure out how many people are outside of this, but still within the set. Okay? And if you remember, the set dealt with 900 people. So if we know the overarching set is 900 individuals, we then take every single number from within here and we subtract it from the overarching set. And that will tell us how much is left outside of those three circles. So I'll write the numbers down, and I already did those calculations also. It should be 900 subtract, see if I can write them all out, 88, 250, 120. So 88, 250, 120. And then we subtract 70, 67, 175. 70, 67, 175. And then we again subtract 120. And after all of this, you should get a value of 10 in this case. So what this means is there should be 10 people who are, it's hard to read right now, who are married males and over 35 years old.